In the beginning, Paragon was one big stat game. How many stats could you get? What was the most efficient route? It was just a numbers game. Now, recently, some very, very interesting core gameplay changing cards have been introduced. There's a big, huge rework coming up, and that's going to be very exciting as well. Now, the transition from just a stat game to a more interesting gameplay game has actually affected Countess quite a bit. Being an incredible burst assassin, the biggest burst assassin that we have yet, she can be played 6 Shadow Scrolls and call it a day. Now, the interesting transition between a stat game and a gameplay game has, I think, affected Countess a lot. There's some really interesting cards that affect her gameplay a ton, and that's what this deck is all about. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a hero building guide. I am Sylphin. So we have Countess here. That is my meta deck for her. That I think is kind of her meta way to play her. Called Selene. So she again is an elusive burst assassin. I think that's her best role. An elusive burst assassin. So really focusing on her burst, but also being elusive as well to kind of survive in higher tier plays. Now, of course, the Archmages for that power, you're a burst assassin. You are an assassin at heart. You need that damage. A whole bunch of tokens because we actually end up with equipment slots to spare, so you can do whatever you want in the early game. Health potion and 2 mana potions, which some people really, really like if you're up against a very aggressive mid laner, so you can just shadow slip in and out. We'll talk more about it later. You can get a health potion healer token, mana potion healer token, whatever you want. Hunter's Drink and Shaman's Drink is better than mana potions and health potions past level 5, so if you still have them, switch out the hero level 5. Switch out the Hunter's Drink and Shaman's Drink for the other stuff, or the other stuff for Hunter's and Shaman's Drink. Now, in the early game here, you start off with a Sage's Ward here that you definitely need in the mid lane, or you can get an Adamant Edge if you're in the off lane, and then the Sage's Ward. Not much of a difference there. Now, you have 2 Adamant Edges as some options there. If your mana is an issue, just keep those mana potions. After those Adamant Edges, you have some options. You have a Hunter's Guile as an option. If you are getting blinded a lot on the phase, if there is an Aurora, so you can cleanse yourself of her ultimate, stuff like that, Hunter's Guile, absolutely fantastic. Some Chimera nonsense, even though you can dodge him really easily with your Shadow Slip, Hunter's Guile is fantastic. After this, I would definitely recommend going into the Stasis Gem and or a Stab Link. You have a Stasis Gem as an option. Again, if you are just getting absolutely completely nuked, that is something that you can use to kind of just boop, mitigate entire enemy ultimates with this. So very interesting option. Now, the late game deck is as follows: Stab Link, a Necroveil, a Thick Blood, or a Tainted Magic. You can either go for Thick Blood if you don't need it, Tainted Magic. Then 2 Shadow Scrolls, and then your beginning Sage's Ward. Tainted Magic or Thick Blood. You have a Necroveil in here, you have a Stab Link, you have 2 Shadow Scrolls, and the Sage's Ward. Now, here in the early game, it's all up to you with what you get in your tokens for the enemy mid laner. If you have a Morigesh, you know that she's going to be just an absolute pain. Puffbot, healer token, absolutely. Or if you get, or if you want to play it super safe, just health potion, 2 mana potions, and just Shadow Slip. Don't even be anywhere near her, and just use your Shadow Slips to get those last hits, stuff like that. To be very. Now, I chose to go with the healer potion and health potion and healer token because I felt like being very aggressive against this Gideon. Unfortunately, my Shadow Slip isn't enough to get there and get some basic attacks. I don't think we would finish him off anyways, but I want to be really aggressive, and you'll see why I think this works in a bit here. Basic attacks, a little bit hard to land. She doesn't hit that hard without power, so it's a little bit tricky, but you will get used to it. Now we have a dummy ward here that I put down in a very safe spot right behind here, right on the steps, so that it can look that way, up here, and down here. Just because if that Chimera wants to do anything funny, I will get a warning down there. You can see that they put a ton of wards there. I don't think I would have been able to manage that if I was there myself. Now, I will say, I am not an overly experienced mid laner. Of all the lanes and all the roles, mid lane is my least experienced, probably my least best role by far. So I'm just take that into account. Just know that. I'm being honest with you. I think you should know. Now, the very first ability that again you get is up to you. The Shadow Slip, if you really just need to get in there, execute a minion, and get out. Or your E for a great AoE lane clear, because there's tons of lane clear, but you're not necessarily getting picked off. Or your passive, your right click, if you just need some sustain and there's not much damage and stuff like that. It's all up to you. Now, I've mentioned a lot her Shadow Slip, and that's one of her very important abilities for sure. Countess targets a nearby enemy and blinks to it. This is a lock-on ability, dealing ability damage and when applying a movement speed slow. If the target is a minion, it is executed. So on huge siege minions that have a ton of health, and especially super minions after inhibitors are down, you can execute those. Boom, one shot, dead. So you can see I actually do that here, execute the siege minion, take a few pot shots at the Gideon, and then I reactivate Shadow Slip, because it returns you to your original position. You have 4 seconds in order to reactivate it to return to your original position. This means that Countess benefits very well from safe original positioning. She can dive pretty hard and then go back to her original position. So just be aware that if you start from a safe spot, you're actually pretty safe if you can do all your nonsense. Now, if you are stunned while that 4 seconds is ticking down, you cannot reactivate it to go back. So be careful. If there is an enemy Narbash is a scary, scary opponent to come up against with a Countess or a Decker. You have to be careful with your Shadow Slip. Don't get caught Shadow Slipping and going too deep, because if somebody stuns you, you're stuck. You're stuck for good. Now, unfortunately, I run out of mana because I can't get this Chimera. And the phases, Energy Lance doesn't freeze him. And unfortunately, mana is an issue. Mana management on Countess is very important. Getting those river buffs as a mid laner to not only, you know, just keep the river buffs advantages away from the enemy team, but also to keep your mana as well. You really have to focus fire on Countess. Well, you're a burst assassin, to eliminate a target. You really have to focus fire and make sure that you use your mana appropriately. Again, I'm not necessarily the best person, but I do know a thing or two. Now, Shadow Slip is again one of her key abilities that you really need to pay attention. The movement speed slow is 400 to 550. And it only lasts, though, it only lasts like a brief moment. It only lasts like a second or a second and a half or something like that. Just to kind of keep an enemy in place while you're teleporting and while you get off a basic attack or something like that. The ability damage, really not that much. 40 to 100. Power scaling at 0.5, so it will get some damage in there. And the mana cost is 100. You have to be wary about it. Range is 850, and that increases when you upgrade it. I usually don't upgrade Shadow Slip too much, to be honest with you, just because the other abilities and upgrading them is so powerful. Now, another very important ability for her, all of her abilities are important and do a lot, is Dark Tide. It's her E or square ability. E or circle ability, sorry. Countess sends out a rolling cloud of darkness in front of her, dealing ability damage to all enemies in the area of effect. It's kind of like it's kind of an odd shape, but it has tremendous AoE potential. You can definitely get it on a lot of enemies. It does a lot. There, you saw my ultimate. Unfortunately, I don't get the kill for it, but that is okay. And we get taken out because of a fantastic Aurora ult. I do remember that. I clutched Shadow Slip into a into a phase pull, and I do manage to get out of there. And oh my goodness, it was really quite stressful here. I was trying to juke out the Chimera here with those shadow slips, being very elusive, and you can see that I managed to do just that. Absolutely crazy. Dark Tide, the ability damage 80 to 260, mana cost 85 to 115, power scaling of 0.9375 with an 8-second cooldown. Does a tremendous amount of damage, especially when you upgrade it just once. That's why you see that it's at level 2 here, because it does. That first upgrade is really significant. This can deal a ton of damage. I usually intentionally try to reposition Countess, try to go in, you know, into the engagement just so that I can line everybody up. I do definitely intentionally do that because it does a ton of damage. So be very careful about that. Now the next ability here that Countess gets, and is a key part of her as well, is her blade siphon. It's her right click or RMB button. What Countess does is she quickly spins, causing ability damage in a circle around her. His ability damage is 60 to 210, a little less than Dark Tide, and the power scaling is less as well, 0.75. The mana cost a little bit lower than Dark Tide, it's a little bit less in all because it has a passive. What also happens is Countess regenerates a percentage of her max health every time she lands a last hit on a target. That's right. Whenever she lands a last hit on a target, she gets a percentage of her health back. Now, the ability damage of it we already talked about, but the health on minion kill, every time you kill a minion, is 2 to 5% of your health. So, because you have fantastic wave clear with your E and your blade siphon, your Dark Tide and your blade siphon, that's a lot of health that you can quickly extract out of a lane wave. Now, if you kill a hero, however, you gain 10 to 25% of your health when you kill an enemy hero. When you get that last hit, it's tremendous. It's pretty ridiculous, as that Revenant Obliterate is also ridiculous. It's kind of dumb. Now, you will see how this deck accentuates her passive, and I think that's why I think the meta has moved in this direction with Countess, because it accentuates her kit and what she's capable of. Now here you can see Countess is fantastic at singling targets out. Unfortunately, I'm an idiot and I don't do Countess things properly. You always want to save your Shadow Slip for an appropriate time. If you don't need to use it, don't. I did not need to use that there at all. And in fact, you can use it to secure kills, which is what I should have done. I should have used my Blade Siphon into my Dark Tide first, then get her to stun me, then go with my Shadow Slip into my ultimate, and then I could have used maybe a Blade Siphon and another Dark Tide in there as well. Save your Shadow Slip in your ultimate. Don't do what I just did there. Now in this game, the Gideon was a fantastic pick against our team. We don't have any stuns besides our ultimate. But what is our ultimate? You've seen it a few times there, and that's what I used to open up on that Decker. It's called Feast. Countess jumps to a nearby enemy hero. It's really not far. It's very, very close range, forcing them to look at her and stunning them before dealing ability damage. This is a stun. I can cancel a Gideon ultimate, a Narbash ultimate, anything that's channeled, I can stop it. It deals 220 to 440 ability damage, costing a fairly significant amount of mana. You have to keep this in mind. 100 to 250, stun duration of 0.75 seconds, power scaling of 1.2, with a cooldown 40 seconds in the late game. 40 freaking seconds in the late game. You can use this a lot. Now, it deals a ton of damage. Power on this ability is ridiculous, and you can use it to secure kills and just open up on targets, which I maybe wouldn't recommend there. As you can see, that's what happens when you open up against a target. Now, here is a nice, pretty easy engagement I get a kill here. I use my Dark Tide. I meant to get that Decker, but my ultimate finishes off that Chimera. Does unfortunately leave my ult not available for the Gideon, although a fantastic Honor the Pure, or Berry of Will rather, probably from our phase, keeps us alive from that Gideon. Now, it's been a little bit rough. We haven't been dealing that much damage because we got the mana potion, two healer tokens into our ward. It takes a little bit for Countess, in my opinion, to kind of come online, just because she really likes that versatility in the healer tokens and those mana potions. So that's very important. Now, though, we've gotten rid of one. We don't necessarily need that much sustain anymore. And we have our Adamant Edge and our Sage's Ward. Ward, obviously, absolutely need it. And the Adamant Edge just for some power and a little bit of health in the early game here to help us kind of snowball perhaps a little bit more. Finish off that Revenant there with a Blade Siphon. As you can see, I'm feeling pretty confident with the rest of my team here. So here is a pretty gnarly engagement. As Countess, you need to focus the priority targets down. I go right for the Revenant, and now it's just getting crazy. The Gideon ults, I'm like, oh, I need to ult him. I do ult him, kind of cancel about half of his ultimate off there, and I Shadow Slip to get that kill and get my health back. At this point, I'm like, oh, I need some mana. Oh, there's a ward here, perfect. And I'm like, oh, I think I can do Countess things. I can probably get this Decker, but then I'm dead. So unfortunately, that was the perfect time for me to have done Countess things, done ridiculous Countess plays, but not enough. Now you can see that the Hunter's Guile there is an interesting idea. Now the enemy team has gotten Orb Prime, and this Hunter's Guile, I'm saving it for that Aurora's ult. It gives us power and health, which works really well on Countess. A little bit of health for that passive to maybe kick into and whatnot. So at this point, I actually dodged the Aurora ult, and now I try to Shadow Slip and then ult onto the Gideon, but unfortunately the Shadow Slip propelled me through him. So that was a weird interplay there. And here at this point, I have no mana to chase the dang Chimera, so that felt really bad. As now we have a Stab Link. I could definitely have chased him down, waited till I had some mana, because the Stab Link is absolutely terrifying on Countess. Not only can she Shadow Slip to a target, she can traverse terrain, she can traverse a distance and surprise you, but with a Stab Link, she can also kind of just come out of nowhere, out of great distances that you otherwise thought you were safe from, and then she has you. So the Stab Link is fantastic versatility on Countess that is very, very meta. A lot of Stab Links, Teleblinks are very, very meta, as repositioning can save your life and save a game. You know, instead of getting caught out, you can Stab Link away and just be safe. Now this enables us to make some risks. Stab Link into a Shadow Slip to take down the Decker, and I am now in there and doing crazy Countess things. You can just, and it enables you to do crazy things like that, and help secure kills, help secure advantages and stuff like that. Now we've finally gone on. You can see we've totally changed everything up because the game's changing. We have enough CP to take it to the next step. We have our Necroveil, our Tainted Magic, not a stab, not a Thick Blood, because yeah, they have a Chimera for that regeneration, but I naturally counter Chimera with my Burst. He won't be able to get that. He won't be able to get the regeneration up, and that's okay. Now, I do great positioning here. Completely delete this Revenant. That is what I need to do. Come into the back line and take people out. At this point, I'm like, I have to take care of the Chimera. I can't let him do Chimera things, and I'm trying to take him out. At this point, I'm like, come on, Stab Link, come on, Stab Link, but they're hitting me, and I can't. But the Morigesh dot takes him out. I'm like, yep, next low target here. I'm going to try to take out this Aurora, but again, mana issues. Trying to focus down a singular target and take them out with certain abilities and just kind of not run into mana issues. Now, one thing I will say is that I transition a little poorly in this scenario. This transition into all of these utility cards don't suffer in the power department in order to just get this utility. So what I should have done is I should have only gotten a Necroveil and saved that I'm an edge and all that power. So make sure you still have a lot of power at all times. Now here's me making a mistake that could have gone in my favor. I stabling forward, try to get the Revenant, and what that would have done is proc my Necroveil. What Necroveil does is you enter the Shadow Plane when you kill an enemy. So I would have been in the Shadow Plane there. That Chimera wouldn't have been able to jump on me. I would have gained 25% of my health back, and I probably would have been able to clean up the rest of the enemies here. You can see that he gets away, and that's all. I would have been able to make it. Unfortunately, I used my Blade Siphon. That didn't hit the Revenant, and that would have done it. If I had stabling forward Dark Tide into my Shadow Slip onto the Revenant, and then my Blade Siphon, I would have got him. Would have gone into the Shadow Plane because of the Necroveil, and then it would have been able to reposition. It enables her to make some pretty ridiculous plays and kind of help with her issue of committing a lot. Like, you know, she needs that safety. Once she bursts somebody down, she kind of needs that safety and ability to reposition, and that's really, really special. Now, what the Tainted Magic allows me to do is apply more damage to more heroes. If I get a good Dark Tide off on multiple enemies, which I always try to do, you just kind of reposition a little bit, and then you can kind of sweep the enemy team. Your Blade Siphon, if you're really in the thick of things, trying to be sneaky assassin, your Blade Siphon can apply that dot to everybody and just add on to that damage. This Gideon does a fantastic ultimate here. I don't have my ult to stop him, so really well done. So here is a good example of that Tainted Magic. I apply it on everybody, and my Blade Siphon goes on everybody as well. Unfortunately, the rest of the engagement doesn't go too well as well. I can't seem to focus down the Revenant and the Decker. The Decker I kind of get onto. And then my ultimate, the Gideon, was too high, and I couldn't, I had to jump, and then I started the ultimate, but he killed me by the time it finished. We do wipe the enemy team and go on to win the game. And it was pretty rough. There are definitely some what not to do moments in here, and some pretty good showcases of what I'm trying to get out of. Trying to get across to you. So that is the deck, guys. You can see a whole bunch of power and ability pan. There isn't 30 ability pan because we don't have enough power to warrant it, but there is still a lot. There is still a lot. I kind of mess up my deck here. I equipped the Thick Blood. I shouldn't have, but the Thick Blood is there as an option instead of Tainted Magic in order to really, if there's a Rampage and a phase or something like that on the enemy team, then absolutely definitely get Thick Blood, because you can really help mitigate the regeneration on the Rampage or Chimera and the phase, plus really hurt the whenever the enemy team uses Quenching Scales and you manage to get off a good Dark Tide or Blade Siphon, it'll really cut down that healing. So it is very effective, but it just is a situational. That's why we have Thick Blood or Tainted Magic. There you guys go. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think of this deck for Countess. She is definitely moved towards a more utility sort of, kind of, but just elusive nature through some very interesting cards for her. So you know, 6 Shadow Scrolls is really fun to kind of 2-button delete somebody, but this, I think, is very much more meta and really helps her fulfill her role in higher tier play. Guys, please like this video if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it, share it with the community, and of course, guys, subscribe. If you guys like this content, especially if you found it useful, I would love to be able to help you out in the future. Till next time, like always, guys, stay optimistic and positive.